Thank you so much to Brunel for inviting me. I'm very grateful and honored to be here. I feel like my student days are coming back to me by reconnecting, so this is wonderful. I am a Brit who now lives in the United States. And what's interesting is that the word barrister meant nothing here until George Clooney married one. So I didn't used to say it because barista is a word for coffee makers or servers. So I started to avoid using the word until now I can actually use it. It's so nice to see so many faces. It's definitely bringing back memories. Um, I graduated in the year 2000 and I went on to Inns of Court School of Law to study for the bar vocational course. I was a member of the Middle Temple, still a member, I suppose. In fact, I'm going to be speaking at Middle Temple soon. So if anybody's a Middle Templar, please do look out for that. Um, I then went on to do my pupillage at a chambers called Bridewell Chambers, which doesn't exist anymore. And I was a third six at two paper buildings, Chambers of Desmond de Silva. And then I was a door tenant at Temple Court Chambers that still exists. But in 2005, I had a sleepless in Seattle moment when I visited here after my bar exams, and I fell in love with on this blind date. And after 3 years of long distance during my pupillage days, I eventually got married to my now husband, who happens to be a lawyer too, and I now live in Seattle, Washington. All my life, I just wanted to be a barrister. I remember walking around the Inns of Court thinking, gosh, I can't wait to be a barrister. And then finally, I become a barrister and I moved countries. So then the dilemma was, how do I continue to practice law? And I remember from my Brunel days and even ICSL days that the New York bar would be advertised as something you can do. And you can take the New York bar with an undergraduate LLB degree from the UK or any Commonwealth country. And I thought maybe I could do that. When I moved to the United States, I live in Washington State. And if you are living in the United States practicing law, you generally have to take the bar exams of that state. But it was just too difficult for me to take the Washington bar at the time. The requirements were such that they would send me to school. And so I thought, well, I'll just take the New York bar because I know I can do that. And then a law firm could hire me and put a little star next to my name saying, admitted in New York. But life doesn't necessarily work that way. I did take the New York bar, and while I was living in Washington State, and it was difficult to get a job with that license. Also, my resume just looked very different to anybody else. I'm so grateful that Brunel allowed me to get those work experiences during the third and fourth year, and I did mini pupillages. And when you're doing these work placements, you're a legal assistant. And, in the UK, a legal assistant does paralegal work. So I did substantial work, but my resume read like a secretary in the United States. So I didn't really realize that initially. And so I wasn't getting the traction that I thought I might get. But I will say that when I was dating my husband, I'd come to the US, I'd volunteer at various nonprofits, and I learned how to read the law. And as you might all know, how to read the law, where to get those citations, what do those citations mean? All of that is an education in and of itself. So the pro bono work, the volunteer work I did sort of set me up to learn a little bit about how to read the law. So by the time I was ready to get a job, I didn't really feel like my resume necessarily looked terribly different from somebody who was graduating from law school here, except all the terminology was wrong. So I feel as though people were looking at my resume and thinking secretary, 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 bar exam. It just didn't make sense. So I wasn't getting the traction. And I did get a couple of offers in immigration law. But having seen immigration law in the UK, to me, it felt it was just asylum law day in, day out. I didn't know it could be a lot more than that. And I didn't necessarily want to do that. Having practiced as a barrister in the UK, I thought litigation might be the right way. But seeing that I wasn't getting the traction I wanted, I thought, okay, well, let me just see what comes up. And then my own immigration lawyer, who was getting my own green card, because at that point I had to go through the system, was going through some personal changes. And she said, well, why don't I take you on as an associate and you can become a partner? And I thought, wow, partner sounds really great. And so I didn't really know what it meant. I just came out of pupillage and I became a partner with her. And the first day of immigration law, I thought, why was I fighting this? Everything about my background was so well suited for immigration law. My parents were immigrants to the UK. I never felt like an immigrant in the UK. That's my home. But I'd seen it and I spoke a second language at home. There was a cultural difference. I lived in Bangladesh. I had that lived experience of an immigrant having just gone through the immigration process as well. But what was most surprising is that the US immigration system is very complicated. You could be just dealing with asylum law day in, day out, or you could just be helping CEOs of companies. You choose what you want to do. You choose what you think you're good at. And I realized I love it because it's complicated, it's intellectually challenging. I can have a variety of different clients, variety of different issues to deal with, and I see a case from start to finish. It's different from a transactional caseload where you're helping a corporation with contracts and agreements and you don't necessarily see the end result. And the biggest difference I could see I was making was in people's lives. They're often fleeing from a country where their lives are at risk, or they're really trying to make a difference in a product or a thing, with startups. And that's a story for a little bit later. And so I'm making a difference to the most important things in people's lives, their loved ones or their livelihoods. And all of that brought it together for me that this is what I was meant to do. And until I succumbed to the universe, it kept following me. So I did that with her from 2006. I moved in 2005, took the New York bar in 2006, started practicing here. And in 2009, by then I had learned how not to practice law from this person I had partnered with. And I also learned partnership comes with a lot of different issues that you don't necessarily think about. There are bills to pay. It's an actual business. There's a lot of liability involved. And if you don't have a partnership with like-minded people, you're left holding the bag, so to speak. And it was a very good education for me. And so in 2009, I started my own practice at the encouragement of my amazing husband, who basically said, what's the worst that can happen? You're going to fail. So what? And so I started that and I haven't looked back. I started my practice in January 2009 and we're here in 2021. And in this period, I have grown my business to have 3 full-time team members, 2 part-time team members, 2 contract associates. And we serve a variety of people, but our primary practice is business immigration, which really means helping small to medium businesses, people who are opening businesses, people who are hiring foreign talent, people who are essentially in the business world. I also help families, which is really helping bring to America their spouses, parents, children, family members. And then I also help people get citizenship. I do not go to court. I did initially. What was interesting about the 2009 period, I thought, well, I'm getting so many calls to go to court, and that's all I wanted to do. Why am I not doing it? And I started to go to court. And the immigration system, honestly, is very different here. But I will say, now that I think about it, the immigration court could be similar to the tribunals that we have in the UK, but there is an actual immigration judge, and they there are similarities and differences, but it's the courtroom setting. If you imagine a tribunal, that's what an immigration court looks like here in general, I'd say, from a broader perspective. But once I had my first baby, I realized I can't go to immigration court. It's too stressful. I can't be sitting there all day when I have a workload in the office. And I started to, slow that down and eventually stop doing that. But as the Trump administration came into office, and as you probably know from the news, immigration was all over the place. And one of them was making sure that people are detained for whatever reason. And I really integrated myself in the community after moving here. And what that led to was really trying to find solutions for the community. And, I'm very grateful Andrew did post an article I wrote recently about legal clinics. But prior to that, I started a nonprofit while maintaining my job, my day job, by the way, and the kids and everything. The nonprofit is to train lawyers so that they can go to immigration court and help detained immigrants. And so, in a nutshell, now that I think about it, I have crammed in a lot since I've left Brunel. But it also includes maintaining a blog since 2008. I had a live radio show for 2 years that is now an active podcast. I've got two books. One was written in 2015, the other in 2020. Yeah, 2020. And I'm actually now working on the second edition of the first book. And what else can I tell you? I love what I do. I really do. I feel like I want to tell people about what immigration means for any country, really, but particularly for the United States, and what the history is. And I recommend to anybody who wants to be a lawyer, read my book, Legal Heroes, because that is a collection of stories of lawyers who really stepped up to protect the rule of law. And all of you who have gone to law school, and anybody listening, most of us go to law school because we want to change the world. We have ideological reasons to help people. But when real life kicks in, you sort of lose a little bit of that sight, because you've got to, work on your caseload, you've got to pay your bills and what have you. But the Trump era really brought us back to that center of understanding why we became lawyers, what our skills can do, and how you can use those skills effectively, even if you have a day job. So I highly recommend that you read that book, just what lawyering is about and how you can be a better lawyer.